in countries all over the world that I could list them out and you would say, wow, those are really poor countries. There's never been a country that has been able to do what South Korea has done economically.
미국 펜실베니아 주립대학교에서 수백 명의 학생들과 함께 인종, 문화, 사회 이슈를 독특한 방식으로 강의를 하고 있는 리차드 교수는 세계적으로 매우 저명한 학자입니다. 특히 그는 한국에 대한 관심과 사랑이 굉장히 많은 인물인데요. 수백 명의 학생들 앞에서 한류를 주제로 한 강의. 이 강의에서 한국에 대해 어떤 말들을 했는지 많이 궁금하시죠? 지금 함께 확인해 보겠습니다.
In countries all over the world that I could list them out and you would say, wow, those are really poor countries. There's never been a country that has been able to do what South Korea has done economically. I'm going to tell you why I think you should pay attention to Korea. Why it would be really wise. And why it would be really wise if you're thinking about looking forward in the world. If you want to be forward-looking and not backward-looking, you pay attention to Korea. And it's just amazing, quite fascinating how for somebody like me who's really interested in world history and is interested in the rise and fall of nations and cultures and the rise and the fall and the rise and the fall, I am 100% convinced that the next rise is in the East. It's in Southeast Asia. No question about it. And if I had children, my children would be studying about Korea. I would be sending them to study abroad in Seoul, not to Rome, not to Paris, not to London. I would be, listen, go for it. You want to be part of the future of the world? You go east. Think east. Imagine east. If I were running a university, these would be the language programs that would be blowing up. These would be the cultural programs, the things that we'd be studying. The GDP in Ghana in 1965 was higher. The GDP in Algeria in 1965 was higher than in South Korea. The GDP in Malaysia, in countries all over the world that I could list them out and you would say, wow, those are really poor countries, were higher than in South Korea. In 2019, the GDP in the UK is 2.8 trillion, and in South Korea, it's actually about 1.6 trillion. South Korea blew up. Things happened in a really, really serious way. Probably in the history of the world, there's never been a country that has been able to do what South Korea has done economically. Never has happened. You'd be thinking, utterly fascinating. So here, let me show you one thing. So the Koreans, how many of you have heard of this word? Wow. Okay. So you're going to get something today. So the Koreans did something really, really fascinating. First off, just in terms of commerce, right? You know Samsung, right? So that's a Korean company, LG, Korean company. And there are all sorts of car technology companies. So this is all Korean. In 40 to 45 years, 50 years, that has happened. Okay? But the Koreans also had some other idea. And they said, look, we can try to compete in the world economically. But, we got to go up against some countries that are way further advanced than we are. And we're going to take a risk. But there's one area of the world, but the one industry that we could bust into is the cultural industry. And so I had this idea. This is a Chinese word, and it means literally Korean wave. We could put our energy into culture, selling culture and getting other people to consume culture, including consume our culture. And we'll focus on television, we'll focus on music, we'll focus on movies, we'll focus on any number of things that where we can put our energy, and we'll sell it to the world. And that's wide open because people are going to consume the kinds of things that are really interesting to them. And so the Koreans did that. They started what's called the Korean wave. which is where, so if you have the idea that, like, this guy, the singer Psy, or all these K-pop bands, this idea that this just emerged out of nowhere, it didn't emerge out of nowhere. It was a very distinct, concerted effort on the part of the Korean government and the Korean people to push these ideas in this culture out around to the rest of the world and get the rest of the world to consume and to buy it. So they would do things like the telenovela, the Korean version of the telenovela, right? And the Korean version of the television shows and the series, to not just direct them like other parts of East Asia, like parts of Eastern Europe, Africa, even South America. And so something like K-pop didn't just emerge out of nowhere. It was years and years and years of very careful crafting and very careful movement forward. Utterly fascinating. And now it's this global phenomenon that people all over the world are consuming and buying and being fascinated by. And it happened just like this. Like even, so the one of the K-pop bands, BTS, was at the music awards last year. And, 3 years ago, I came into this class and I said, hey, how many of you know BTS? And like 10 hands went up in the air. And then last year, after BTS was at the music awards in the United States, about a month later, I came into the class and I said, hey, how many of you have heard of BTS? And almost the entire class raised their hand. And that's how quickly this stuff happens. And has been happening in the world for the past 20 plus years. So there's this movement in pop, in Korean pop, of male features. This dude's cool. Men, right? Men in here, right? This dude is a dude that Korean women find really sexy and handsome. Got it? Here's a dude. And so look at him. Look at what he's got. Makeup. So we got makeup. We have dyed hair. We have soft features. And you got the abs. All this. Gotta have the abs. So this dude is like the classic K-pop guy. Right? And if you look at all these K-pop stars and one after another, you see these photos and you see the guys are all the same and they're handsome. They're cute and they're handsome. And they're considered to be really, really attractive, and not just by 18-year-olds and 15-year-olds, but by 30, 40, and 50-year-olds. You can be a guy in the West and be thinking, yeah, no, that's not really cool. And here you got, let me just walk you through something, men. You got a movement in the world called K-pop, driven by a culture that is unlike any culture we've ever seen in the world, where the essence and the style of masculinity, of cool guys, cool men, are guys like this. What makes you think that this dude isn't going to be the style in the United States in 30 years? What makes you think that you're going to have kids, that you won't have kids? Or imagine this, that you have boys and your girls come home and this is the kind of guy they're interested in. Or here, this is a Chinese band. And if you think like, no, that's not possible because we're still into macho-ness and beards and so on. It's like, remember this, the Korean wave, you're standing on the shore, you got your back to the ocean, and the Korean wave might be ready to just knock you over because you have no idea of what's coming. This is BTS. This is the band that really has put K-pop on the charts. Look at these guys. This is the future. And I'm going to put my money on the idea that this trend where these men represent the future of masculinity in many parts all over the world is probably very likely to happen. How many of you, raise your hands again, find these men to be particularly attractive? Raise your hands. Okay. Awesome. It's like 20 people.